Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and the one and only Jake Barr with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Jake, a.k.a. the John Wayne of Global Supply Chain. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this one. It's going to be spicy.
Yeah, it is spicy and informative and entertaining. I think it's going to be a great show. So, folks, we have an outstanding conversation teed up here today. Wonderful guest, a repeat guest at that, industry leader back by popular demand. We're going to be shining a big old bright light into the future of supply chain. Hey, where the heck are we headed, especially when it comes to innovative technology and next-gen digitalization? Stay tuned as you might be surprised by a few of the glimpses of the bright global supply chain future state. Jake, hey, we're going to really deliver on this one, huh?
Absolutely. This guest is going to bring it over the top.
Over the top. Over the top. All right. Looking forward to an informative, enlightening, and entertaining conversation. So with all of that said, I want to welcome in our special repeat guest here today. He serves as the CFO of Digital Technology at DP World, a leading provider of smart logistics solutions that helps to enable the flow of trade all across the globe. And we need all the help we can get when it comes to that, right? Prior to his current role, our guest held leadership roles with technology movers and shakers such as Amazon Web Services and Alibaba. He also brings a background in private equity to the table, which allows him to inject strategic and welcome financial perspective to all that he does. Mostly welcome, I bet. Let's welcome in Hans Moerman. Hans, how you doing today?
Doing good, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, you bet. It's great to have you back. We had a blast with you last time, and as Jake has already been teeing it up, you're going to come off the top rope and hit it out of the park today. Ain't he, Jake?
Absolutely. Let's get into it. We have so many challenges around global supply chains, and
That's
the
right.
world of commerce is not getting any easier to execute.
It isn't, and I wish we could start off the new year on a brighter note, but we got to keep it real, right, Jay? We got to keep it real. Got no shortage of challenges. But before we get into all that, Hans and Jake, you know how we do it here, Hans. I want to start with a fun warm-up question, get to know you a little better. It's great to see you again. Now, last time, I'm going to say about a year ago, might be about 18 months ago, last time you were with us, we spoke about your passion for endurance sports and some of your world travel. Now, I want to stick with the latter part of that, Hans, okay? As I've been doing some snooping on you, Hans. Not too much, but I see you've been keynoting at several conferences all around the world in recent months. MENA, the Economist Impact, name a few. And I got to ask, aside from the conferences themselves, what was one of the best experiences you've had at one of these global events, Hans?
So I'll say that my best experience at any of these events, especially if I have to speak outside of the speaking itself, is hands down the breakfast. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
It starts with the fact that I'm quite an introverted person. So before I have to speak, I kind of start eating myself up, right? Like what to say, what to do. So I wake up in the morning and okay. I do something I like to do and I do good. So I go running. I go for some exercise to tire my body and to make that voice inside my head a little bit quieter.
Okay.
After that, I take a shower, head for the venue. But obviously, you have to be there early. There's very little time to have any food at home. So by the time I reach there, that breakfast at the conference is starting to look really, really good. And a great speech starts with a great breakfast.
Okay, I love that. That's been there, done that perspective. But one quick follow-up before I get Jake to comment on your proven more early morning routine there, Hans. out of all the world breakfasts you've enjoyed, is there one particular item that is one of your favorites?
Hard to pick just a single one, but I do love a good dosa in the morning.
Okay, all
Indian
right,
food is awesome food.
it is, and
That's a true world
delicious.
traveler there, Scott.
That's right, Jake. So, Jake, speaking of folks that have been flying here and there, burning up the runways lately, you've heard from Hans that proven early morning routine, jogging, showering, big breakfast, as he prepares for the day, and some delicious Indian food on top of that. What about you? What's been a cool experience in your travels lately, Jake?
Well, let's both agree what Hans look keynoting at any event is an endurance sport. It really is because the prep you have to put into it, the way you have to think through the execution of the material, and more importantly, the time you have to spend after you step off stage with a couple of hundred people throwing questions left, right, up, down. It can be honestly exhausting. So I start my routine much like Hans does, but I don't do the run, okay? Because
Okay.
at my age and my feet structure, that just simply won't handle it anymore.
Way keeping it real. We got to whatever we do in the morning, it's got to add to our day, not detract from our day. And sometimes, those dogs can be barking as you're on a stage in front of several thousand people. But Hans, I appreciate you and Jake both giving us some glimpses into how folks can maybe best prepare for their day, whether they're keynoting or leading supply chains or making global commerce happen, which we're going to touch on here in just a moment. But Hans, if you remember, we like adding lots of context to these conversations. We can't get enough context, I believe, in this ever fast moving world. So I want you, if you would, Hans, tell us a little bit more as we get to know you a little better about your professional background. Could you share a little bit more there, Hans?
Yeah, sure. My background is in economics and in physics, and I started my career as a financial analyst in a private equity firm. Basically, there I learned to apply theory models to businesses, right, and make good investment decisions. With that experience in my backpack, I decided I wanted to join an actual business and joined a startup based out of Southeast Asia called Lazada, who was later acquired by Alibaba. During that business, I was CFO for the delivery division of that company, and this is really where we had to massively scale up an organization from a couple of hundred drivers to thousands. And when I left, we had about 10,000 people driving their scooters and operating our logistics sites in Southeast Asia. And my role was really to, on the one hand, keep control, right? As a CFO, one of the most important thing is nothing can explode in the organization. But on the other hand, to make all that growth possible, and to build this successful unicorn. I did that for 4 years, and then I joined what's basically the largest startup in the world. I joined Amazon Web Services, driving the enterprise strategy for Asia Pacific, where I learned what velocity at scale means. Right? The growth. There's no business in the world that combines that size with that level of growth and that level of engagement with the customer. So I found it a super interesting experience for me, and I really enjoyed my time there. I did that for 4 years, and I joined DP World 2 years back. I'm the CFO for Digital Technology, and in this role, I help DP World transform from what is still really traditional business to a digital company. I drive a number of digital businesses. I look after the internal software, and ultimately, if that can be monetized or drive return on investment other ways. Um, and I look overall after the technology function financially for our group.
So Hans, I'm going to have a couple follow-up questions for you, but Jake, before we do that, by my count, what a perfect storm, a perfect mix of physics, finance and private equity, technology, supply chain, of course, but also over the top of all that, scale and growth and complexity. And what an incredible or very unique and interesting background that perspective and experiences that Hans brings to the table, huh?
Han has the magic spaghetti bowl where he's put his hands in and played with all the noodles, all the factors, the money, the operations, the tech, the landing zone, the consumer. He's got it.
He does. It sounds like me as a 3-year-old playing with my bowl of spaghetti, Jake. But Hans, you shed a little light on what you do as CFO of Digital Technology at DP World. But just one quick follow up. DP World, in a nutshell, would you explain to some of our folks that may be newer to the organization just a little bit about what the organization does, just kind of in a nutshell?
DP World, originally a regional port operator operating from Dubai, who became a global port operator by acquiring and building ports on all continents, who are now transforming into a global logistics provider, providing factory floor to customer door service to our end customers. A massive company of 100,000 plus employees, active on all the continents in a variety of businesses. So it's a massively complex company, which historically was organized on really an entrepreneurial point of view, with a lot of businesses driving their own initiatives. And the challenge we have now is how do we combine the power in all these businesses and provide better opportunities for our customers, which requires us to, in terms of people, processes, and systems, to be much more integrated, and to make all that intrinsic power that we have in our company available to our customer.
Yeah, Scott,
Hans, go
Hans
ahead.
is underselling it just a touch. I mean, truthfully, at last count, if I remember correctly, Hans, I think there's something a little north of 6 billion in physical assets alone, just in port operations that you have around the world. And as a company like mine that I worked for and led for quite a while at P&G, that did business in 120 countries around the world, it's vital day to day, Scott, to be able to just simply execute the commitment and fulfillment execution, right? Your availability, your ability to promise across that many footprints. And Hans, I agree with you. Hey, when you have that large scale in operation, if they're not dancing to the beat of the same drummer, right? And how you're thinking about moving things through, it actually adds a layer of complexity instead of becoming an asset.
I appreciate that context, Jake. And one other thing I think that's interesting to call out that Hans was referencing is sounds like the company prides itself on having the entrepreneurial culture, which is a wonderful thing. But as you grow, as both of y'all were speaking about growing and scaling, and you're trying to get everyone on that same sheet of music as you were talking about, Jake, where is that needle between highly entrepreneurial and highly standardized, right? It's a very interesting and intricate balancing act. So maybe we'll get into more of that, especially as we look at the path ahead. But Hans and Jake, great context so far. I want to shift over to a city, a wonderful city that both of y'all have already referenced a couple times, and that is Dubai. Jake, I think you've just were in Dubai here recently.
Yep. It's a
Incredible
wonder of the world.
Wonder of the world. I can't wait. I haven't been there yet. I cannot wait to visit soon. But Hans, I will talk about one specific event, the Global Freight Summit 2024, which was held in Dubai. 137 different countries were represented, as well as 26 different industries. You attended. I think you spoke at this event, if I'm not mistaken, Hans. A couple of key takeaways that you would share from both maybe the keynote sessions, but as well as all those sidebar conversations that really make events really valuable.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start maybe up with why we're doing this. Right. This is the third installment of our Global Freight Summit, and the biggest one so far. And I suppose it goes just like it goes with the Olympics, right? These were the best Olympics so far, and we'll continue that trend. We've set it up as a neutral platform where freight forwarders, traders, shippers can meet and solve problems in their business, drive opportunities, and ultimately get more business for themselves. Right? If you come to Dubai and you come to our office, you see that on our office it's painted massively. We make trade flow, which is the mantra for DP World, and I think the GFS is just one of these events that show that we're absolutely serious about it. I love to be at that event. One reason is obviously the energy with all the participants, the traders, and what we really encounter is that they're looking for digital solutions to help them trade more effectively, to help them ship more effectively. They're looking for additional opportunities. Many of these companies are fairly local in their expertise, but from time to time they have global opportunities. They're looking for the network, and one of the things that we want to give them through the GFS and through our Digital Freight Alliance is to provide local players ultimately with the global capabilities of that network. Obviously, something else that's great is the speakers, and that's where I always find a lot of energy, especially. One thing that I think we should speak a bit more about is the view of our company's chairman, which provides a little bit of light on the state of global trade in otherwise maybe a bit gloomy times at the moment.
Well, so solutions, speakers, networking, industry market intel gathering, and perspective exchange, but also the relationship side, which is so important to maintaining, throughout these gloomy times, challenging times, or the good times, right? But I want to go back before I get you to comment on what we heard there from Hans. I want to go back to the mantra. I could see it as you described it, Hans. We make trade flow. Jake, reminds me, the Bellamy brothers had it wrong. They shouldn't have been let your love flow. It's let your trade flow. Am I right, Jake?
Absolutely.
Huh?
We should recoin that, re-record it, spin it out.
Yeah, we'll release it next month. But Jake,
Actually,
I know.
I'm going to tell you, the chairman, I know the chairman in question. He would love it.
We'll try to make that happen. But Jake, comment if you would. Hans was painting that picture, and on the first part of his response, what I admire when companies invest in events like that is they really want to make it an agnostic platform, right? To bring in folks from all around the world to find those solutions and have those critical conversations that do power breakthroughs, that do lubricate trade and innovation, other things. Jake, what'd you hear there?
Yeah. Look, Scott, I mean, as Hans is a practitioner of it, as well as I've lived through it, look, the level of chaos and pace of change that we're trying to deal with just to execute letting trade flow, right, has gotten increasingly more difficult to execute. So, to be blunt, there's no single person or company that can execute and be the consummate player to help you achieve all that. And so, what Hans is describing is they're facilitating, they've done a wonderful job at it, of helping to create a network of networks, right? The ability to not only find and help connect the players that can allow you to solve the problems, because the problems, quite frankly, and Hans knows this, the problems are local. They're local to here and local to there. But the problem is, I have to stitch these together to execute the global trade, right? So fundamentally, what they've done in a very short period of time, and Hans, again, you're underselling it. 3 years, in fact, it's the largest event relative to global trade that exists on the planet in three
Wow.
years.
All right. Well, Hans, you're gonna take Jake with you wherever you go because
Yeah.
he is keeping it real with the cool things y'all are doing over at you and the DP World team are doing, and I hope to make the next one perhaps in 2025.
Hey, Scott, don't
And
let me add a little cherry on top. But what Hans is focusing on right now is absolutely mission critical, because while they're stitching the network together, what they're doing through GPS and a number of other elements is providing the way to bring the intelligence to life
yeah,
to allow the business decisions to be made faster, right?
yep,
So a lot of these smaller players that fit and must be part of a network to make it viable, right? To execute things, simply don't have the capability on their own to stitch together the fabric that we need because of the real-time problems.
yep. You keep using that phrase, that verb. I'll challenge my English nomenclature here. That verb stitch, and in my mind, Hans and Jake, I don't know about y'all, but global supply chain is this massive, beautiful tapestry, right? And you pull on one thread here, it's gonna have a variety of impacts throughout this delicate, as we've found, especially in recent years, fabric. And I love, Hans. I'll give you the last word here before we move on and really get into the future. But I admire companies and leaders that invest in these events, much like what y'all do, Hans, for 3 years now running, and many others. So that helps facilitate these discussions and helps bring practitioners together, helps them find solutions and foment new relationships, which will help that trade flow in months moving forward. Hans, give you the last word here on that event and the why behind it, and then we're going to move into the future of supply chain. Your last word there, Hans.
So so we definitely haven't seen the last here, right? And maybe the reason why, Jake, you're saying I'm underselling it, is that there's still a massive way up for these events. Um, the the amount of energy that is released between these participants is massive. We get amazing feedback from freight forwarders attending this event, and introducing them to new opportunities. Um, Learning it's it's a group process, right? And uh, we learn as a person, we learn as an organization, but like even as a whole industry, we learn and we find ways to improve, uh, to make that fabric, that stitched fabric, more resilient. Um, and ultimately, these sessions are helping us do that. I do like to spend a little bit of time uh, on some of the speakers there, because that's the one thing I felt we haven't done complete justice to. Um, we've had amazing views on where is uh, what is the state of our global economy according to the chairman, and what he paints a picture of nations and regions having this tendency now to contract, right, and to put barriers in place. But ultimately, what he presented really well was that trade will always prevail, right? And the amount of people that have been taken out of poverty through trade, the amount of business, the amount of wealth that is created through trade is so large that uh, this this ripple will be temporary. And even if a single region changes its policies, this will require us to restitch the fabric, right? And find a solution, which we'll do in these events and others. But ultimately, the customers continue to want what they want, and
Right.
if they don't get it from if they don't get it from China, they will get it from Europe. If they don't get it from Europe, they will get it from the US, and so on. And this cycle will continue. We, through these events, will make ourselves more and more flexible. We still have plenty of opportunity to take cost out of the supply chain, and I overall, through that keynote and a number of other keynotes, that's the strong feeling that I left with from the GFS, a feeling of optimism.
I, I'm glad you brought that up, and I love that goes beyond optimism in my book as practical optimism, and that's even better, right? Not should taking any light away or any. I love naive optimism is powerful too, by the way, and I have some of that from time to time. But that practical optimism, Hans, that you shared, I love that. And Jake, I love that phrase. Trade will always prevail. Reminds me of it's not money talks; it should be trade talks. We're going to shoot a note over to ACDC too. But Jake, respond to that, and then we're going to move into
Yeah,
the future of global supply chain.
yeah, Scott, that's the greatest truth of all. I mean, consumer and or patient, if you're in the healthcare industry, right? Demand drives the explosion of business and trade, right? And so
Yeah.
a consumer preference or something. And as Hans clearly pointed out, wait a minute, if I have something that I really like and I want, well, today it may be made and manufactured in one location, et cetera, and we may have someone that's playing with tariffs or doing whatever and attempting to say, hey, I'm going to shift the picture. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't come and visit me, who's the consumer of the item. I still want it. I will find it. I will get it. I may have to
Right.
go to a secondary source, but now trade has taken over and it's shifted the dynamics of where it's sourced and where it's made and how what it's priced and all of that. But the demand didn't go away. It
Right.
won't because I've set a
Yep.
preference. So to Hans' point, I absolutely applaud that because and that actually is a great segue into the digitization topic, because that means we have to be far more agile on actually managing the inflection of the changes in the people, process, etc., for how we then execute those changes.
Yes, Jake. Yes, I love when other folks make my segues for me.
There we go.
They're challenging alone. But Hans and Jake, we got a lot more stuff to get to. Hans, I love it already. I love reconnecting with you here already, and really appreciate what y'all do with the summit. We'll have to have you back to give us the key takeaways from the next one there in Dubai. So as Jake
Actually,
mentioned,
Hans, I think he should do a live broadcast from the next one.
ooh, even better, Hans. Man, Jake, I'm going to
But
take you
that's a
everywhere I go.
deal.
So let's talk about finally what I believe, and I think practically, not naively, the bright future of global supply chain, especially from that technology and digitalization standpoint. So, while they're all connected for sure, I want to segment this conversation into what y'all know and what everybody knows is three well-known, good old tried and true buckets, right? People, process, and technology. So Hans, perhaps this first bucket is one of my favorites, right? The people perspective. What are some of the things that you are most excited about in supply chain tech that is unfolding in the months ahead? That's due in part to people power.
People power. So I think an important trend in terms of the first of the two P's, right? The people, is employers focus on employee well-being, and I think that's the trend, is that this is transitioning from something fluffy and kumbaya type to an actual business proposition. With uh, with the advent of technology, the pressures on the workforce, the impact that mobile phones and all these applications have on people's welfare, on people's well-being, this becomes a business problem. And uh, for businesses, a huge drag on productivity, a huge drag on their ability to deliver for their customers. So what I'm excited about is that two these two goals are now aligned. What's best for the employee, driving their well-being, is now also what's best for the business. And what we'll see is that if the moment this becomes a business goal, we'll see that our technology will start supporting that. We have some technologies in our company to look after our employee rostering, and my expectation is that more and more these type of what were previously considered soft factors will be included in those technologies.
Hans, right out of the gate, I love it. The burnout factor is very real, and let's face it. Global supply chain management has never been easy. But in my lifetime, these last 3 years or so, we've seen stress and pressure and burnout rise to some really high levels. And I love, Hans, you call out that shift that I see as well, where it goes from lip service, which we don't need any more of, right? Empty promises. We're going to bake whatever into our mission statement. It's that kumbaya. It's that no action related warm and fuzzy when it comes to employee well-being and team well-being. Two, let's bake it into a formal business strategy where our team members can see it every day. Love that, Hans. Jake, your thoughts?
Scott, you got to do it. Unless you're going to run a going out of business sale, your people are your fundamental underpinning to be able to manage your business in global trade. I mean, let's be frank. Global trade is about moving things. It's about large transactional masses. It's about constant problem solving, right? And so, as Han was sharing, look, Manually trying to muscle your way through things in the past was okay if you had a constant supply of a workforce that could just be rotated. No, you can't. In fact, you've got to shift the focus today. So the people element of it is I want to empower the people that I have with the tech capability where instead of trying to find the needle in the haystack around the issues that have to be solved with all the multitude of changes, I don't know, Hans, in an average day, we can handle literally 7 million, several million shipments, right? On a global scale. Okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Manually go through and figure out with the updates which one has a consequence to it or not? It's not humanly possible. Now, we've had that in the past where people were trying to do that, right? So the scale and the complexity just has continued to grow to where now the tech has to enable the ability to turn people that were transactionally oriented in the past to actually business decision outcomes, right? So they're able to focus. It finds the issue, provides the options to them, and allows them, using their knowledge and their mastery and their depth of supply chain expertise, to then make the decision instead of spending 90% of the time on activities, quite frankly, that weren't value added.
Right. And all of that shift you're speaking to, Jake, moving from a nice to have to you got to have it. You got to have it. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Let's get into the second P, as you were calling it, Hans. Now, I took a little artistic license with this one right here, right? When it comes to process. So my thought is, and Hans, take us where you will, but I would suggest we think of the craft of supply chain management and how you see that evolving in the short term or the longer term future ahead.
The craft of supply chain management. Oh, wow.
I stole that blatantly from Greg and many others, Hans. So just obligatory disclaimer.
So what I imagine is that a lot of decisions in this craft that were human made and implicit are going to be system made and based on data. This is the change that we're going to see. So optimizing your process will no longer be just running Lean and Six Sigma teams into your organization, trying to drive out cost. Optimizing your supply chain means analyzing your data really, really well. It means, and it puts very different requirements on your data than you had before. So it all of a sudden becomes important to treat your data as if it's a product, because now your version of the data is important, because different versions of that data are going to lead to different outcomes of whatever model and whatever decision model you're driving. And success or failure is going to depend on that. So this data will become an entity that you need to manage on its own, almost as if it's your workforce. This is where I see this going long term, and I'm curious if this turns out to be true, yes or no. But we see our organization taking small steps in that direction, experimenting with it, optimizing our port operations based on the data that is available, combining various sources, starting small in a single port, but then but then with plans to expand this throughout the organization. So really exciting times ahead, um, and we need to see if the champions in the old world are still the champions in the new world.
Ooh, okay, Jake. There's a lot there.
The gauntlet has been thrown. I am thrilled with that because
Yeah.
you know me, I'm a mathematical geek, and at the end of the day, I sit and I go, wait a minute, I I have a wonderful playground to actually leverage capabilities from an AI and machine learning standpoint, pattern recognition and noise cancellation, being able to actually do predictive and prescriptive decision making based on understanding the anomalies and being able to pull those things together where it would have taken my people hundreds of hours to try to even identify it, let alone be able to act on it. So to be able to flip that in a way to make it empowering the organization to be able to understand there's some decisions that we can make that'll actually have quantifiable, not only service, but also financial outcome.
Right. You know, earlier, Hans, you mentioned lean. And of course, lean is at the heart of it is the relentless elimination of waste in all of its forms. At the heart of it, and you know, as we talk a lot about eliminating this manual work, and Jake, you were just talking about the work that goes into identifying the problem or the opportunity, and then of course all the manual work that sometimes can be involved in solution. And when we're going back to millions of shipments a day, those numbers start to rise incomprehendingly. If that's even where I'll coin a new word here. And that's really, it's got to be a new waste. I don't know if we're at 9 or 10 or 11. A new one's added, it seems like every couple of years. But the waste of not leaning into better process and better technology to make life easier on the people, and eliminating not just the work manual hours, for lack of a better phrase, but also the manual work that goes into that discovery phase, Jake, that you were pointing to.
Yeah,
Huge, massive missed opportunity.
Scott, we'll always have a mix of near term Kaizen, loss elimination, Six Sigma work that you're executing on a daily basis. But you know what? With the scale and the complexity of what we're dealing with, you know, what's really exciting about the digitization effort is, look, I can actually go and we'll use a pragmatic example, right? Hans is operating one of the ports that is in the DP World network, and I can literally model what is the difference between the crane operating at a 97% level of efficiency and an 89% level of efficiency, right? Now, is today the 89 or is tomorrow the 97, right? And then, so actually identifying that up front and seeing where the bottlenecks are, I can preemptively do workflow, system changes, etc., right? To give me the ability for better agility based on weather. So I don't have to just do it executionally in a single Lean Six Sigma piece of work, but I can step back and do it systematically, right? And predictively.
Ooh, love it. Love that. And that kind of goes to the first part of your response there, Hans, where you see the future, short-term, future term being system, data, and analysis driven, amongst other things. One quick sidebar, and we're going to move to technology. Hans, one of your passions in this journey is, believe it or not, incomprehensibility is indeed a word. I'm not sure if that's the word I was trying to coin, but according to Google, that is a word. Learn new things every day. But kidding aside, the opportunities, especially at scale, at enterprise scale, one problem, opportunity, challenge in one operation. When you're talking about 1,000, goodness gracious, the returns could be massive, and that's where the incomprehensibility comes in. But Hans,
And the interesting thing to add is that it's not only returns that are massive, right? it's also a very expensive technology.
Right.
If you just look at the amount of investment that goes into these more general AI companies, it's massive, and at a level that no industry will ever be able to follow, right? So we're really at a point where we need to make very thought through business decisions about what is the level that we want to invest. Are we going to lean on publicly available models? That's possible, but then how do we differentiate ourselves if we do that? Are we going to train models of our own? To what extent? And there, the moment we go into that, this whole box of questions opens, and this is why we need to transform our company, right? We as a company need to be good at making these decisions. It's an extremely young field. There are hardly any experts. So the reality is that we're going to have to take our existing people, the ones that are already the experts in managing the operations in the port or in logistics, and give them the necessary challenge on the necessary training and background on using these models. So it's a massive transformation of our workforce if we want to do it. It requires thought through investment decisions, and it requires that we really invest in specific areas where we can move the needle on this technology, and operate using our data. I just saw that 12.5% of world's container volume now moves through our systems. We should be able to use that, and
Yes.
we will. The moment that we get this right. But it's a massive opportunity, but also a massive challenge for us.
Ah, Scott, the paradox. Such a grand opportunity, but how do you walk your way through it? You know what's coming. Crawl, walk, run, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
fundamentally breaking this down, and I love how Hans positioned it as, wait, I'm going to take my most valuable asset, my people, and we're going to identify some business problems that I can get my arms around and use that as my starting point for actually helping to move the organization through.
Mm. That's right. What a journey of a million miles starts with the first step, right? And how can we quantify that first step, that first mile, you name it. So Hans and Jake, good stuff there. And also Hans, in your last response, I like how you were, in my mind at least, stitching between these areas of this tapestry we've been talking about. And that leads us to technology, which we've already talked a lot about, but just formally want to ask you the question, Hans, because this is obviously a big area of passion for you. What's an innovation, or possibly two, that you are seeing, or you will be tracking more and more in the short-term future ahead?
Yeah, so trends that we see are definitely electrification. So electrification of our fleet, efficiencies in the ports through new solutions. We're rolling out a box bay, a stacked container solution that we have in Jebel Ali, and we see and we see operating that in other places as well. Um, we see that sustainability, just like very similar to my point earlier on the people side, is no longer a lip service topic. It's getting more and more of a business topic, and even in our industry, which I think is traditionally one of the biggest contributors to emissions, with I think 10% or something of global emissions from shipping. We see that companies like ours and others are starting to make their contributions, not just because of lip service, because it's an absolute business need to do so. Even in today's environment, we still continue to see that trend. Then on the system side, on the digital side, well, we've spoken about artificial intelligence. Another important topic, I think, is cybersecurity. With increasing tensions in the world, a company that connects continents is a company that should be mindful of its cybersecurity, and include that way more in the design, not only of our systems, but our entire business process. We should be thinking of how do we make sure that our data is secure, our customers' data is secure, our systems are secure at every step of the way. So this is very high on our priority list.
Undoubtedly, I'll tell you. I'm quite surprised that just given all the cyber disruption we've already seen, it could be so much worse. And what we're moving into, as we talk a lot about, because the good actors and the wonderful technology innovations that we're seeing change industry, that's great. But unfortunately, in that paradox, to steal a highfalutin word from Jake, the bad actors have access to same technology, and they're going to do bad actor things. Jake, comment there, though, on any aspect of technology trends and predictions that Hans was making.
Well, I think Hans hit it correctly. Look, the biggest movement over the next, call it 3 to 5 years, is really going to be a pronounced need to continue. Look, global trade will and forever will have a cost-based structure and viability to it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's part of the chain of delivering that consumer product, right? Whatever it is, a durable good, a non-durable good, a perishable, whatever, right? And so the affordability of those plays into account. And as such, everything that Hans is laying out is really about helping to drive further efficiencies across the chain, right? And how effective your people are and how quickly they can manage it. So there's a reduction in dwell time, how efficiently they're able to run the ports so that the throughput can continue to increase, how efficient they are at power consumption and fuel consumption. So it keeps their rates and keeps them relevant. And if you're managing 10, 12% of global container traffic going through, then by all means, you're going to have to do that, because obviously you're going to see shifts if you can't be cost effective, right? And so tech is going to play a huge role. And I agree, he's hit it succinctly. Look, AI, the level of speed at which we are seeing the advancements in AI and ML capability across industry verticals and process areas is just mind-blowing. And if you think it's mind-blowing now, what I already see in the pipe for like 12 and 24 months out is going to be mind-blowing yet again. Okay.
Incomprehensible.
Yes,
just about.
Very close.
Just about. All right. And that's a good thing on so many different levels, but also, as any technological innovation, it comes with risk and it comes with other responsibilities. All right, Hans and Jake, excellent conversation. Wish we had a couple more hours. Talking about technology, though, Hans, would be remiss if we didn't talk about cargo's flow. Can you share a brief overview of what that is and the value it presents shippers?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, it is our solution that tells a shipper where their cargo is, regardless of the mode of transport, regardless of who is shipping it. Cargo's flow will tell you where your container, your flights, your truck transport is at any given time. It's a service that we make available to our customers. We make it available in a software as a service model, and to me, it's an important step in our capabilities, right? Because owning your operations globally, at the very least, means that you need to know where all your stuff is. And this technology is then also the stepping stone to all the future solutions that we're building, right? So the moment that we know where our container is, we add AI layers on top and predict when will it arrive. We know when containers are arriving. We can start working with our customers in managing their exceptions, right? Don't tell me where my container is. Tell me which one is not going to be in time. And even better, tell me what you're going to do about it. And this way, from our side, we'll progress to a much deeper integration with our customers, where we'll be able to offer increasingly more useful and valuable services to them. And this all starts with having cargo flow.
I appreciate that. And Jake, the constant, just in his response there, points to the constant evolution that takes place in the demand that shippers have. A couple of years ago, the big phrase, the mantra you heard, "Where's my stuff at? Where's my stuff at?" Now, as Hans alluded to, it's not where my stuff is. It's not only where my stuff is, but what's going to be late, what's going to be on time, and better yet, not done yet, what are you going to do about it? Jake, what'd you hear there about cargo's
actually,
flow?
Scott, it goes a level further. So
Okay.
it goes into, and I know of consequence, the fact that one container out of the 1,000 that you're offloading has 2 days left on it before we get to a product expiry situation, right? So being able to use the technology to actually adjust the workflows, adjust the offloading, adjust the transit piece, be able to maximize instead of wastage, right? Because look, waste, we talk lean and we talk Six Sigma. The mother of all wastage is when you lose, the clock runs out on you, right? Because of the number of other factors that have occurred. So how do you change the conditions that allow the clock not to run out on you?
Right. And kind of one of the things I hear there, Jake, is we always talk about what's within our control. Well, in many ways, we've got new opportunities to bring more things into our control that previously might have been out of our control.
Absolutely.
And that's exciting, Hans and Jake. Okay, Hans, man, it's great. It's so great to have you back here at Supply Chain Now. I'll tell you, while we were kidding pre-show, it feels like it's been like 6-7 years since you last joined us. That's kind of probably one of the reasons that feels that way is because the rate of change and the velocity that industry is taking off at and increasing every day. But appreciate you coming back here. Appreciate your perspective and expertise. I do hope to see you in Dubai next year or this year, later this year, perhaps. But Hans, you're everywhere. You're keynoting. You're making business happen, making trade happen. How can folks connect with you, Hans?
So best way to connect is either via my email, hans.moerman@dpworld.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or come see me running the streets in Dubai in the morning time.
Or Hans,
Awesome.
perhaps it's where you and I hook up with Scott at DP World, where we take him out to the indoor ski slope. What do you think?
Oh, that sounds like a plan. Are you up for it, Scott?
I'm up for it. I'm up for the challenge. I'm up for the challenge. And by the end of the year, I'll definitely be up for the challenge. We're making some health gains here at Supply Chain Now. But Jake and Hans will be ready. We'll be ready. But Jake, before we get out of here, we've covered so much ground with Hans. I really have enjoyed a very holistic conversation, innovative, optimistic conversation, practical, optimistic conversation. What's been one of your favorite key takeaways from our chat here with Hans?
Look, it's a very pragmatic reality. Global trade and global commerce will always win. It will dictate the environment in which we do business in, because unfortunately, the undeniable truth is that when consumers want something, no matter where they are in the world, they will get it one way or another. So no matter what kind of artificial limits we try and put on it, there will always be a need for global trade and the global supply chain to continue to ratchet up its game and to be more efficient and more capable than it was before.
Ooh, love that. What a great soundbite to wrap up today's conversation. Folks, hey, take heart. Trade will always prevail. And as a corollary to that, as Jake alluded to earlier,
You
there's
remember
a
what we said last time on the podcast, Scott? Resistance is futile.
Yes, yes. We made a Star Trek reference last time you joined us, Hans. You're that makes you really cool in my book. So we'll have to continue that Star Trek supply chain conversation in the next episode, because indeed resistance is futile. Hey, really quick, I want to mention one other thing before we wrap here. There's so much to this conversation, but also what Jake and Hans alluded to. There's a reason continuous improvement efforts are always around, because there's always an opportunity. There's always an opportunity to change how business has always been done. And I really appreciate what Hans and Jake both are doing in that regard. So big thanks, Hans Moerman, once again, CFO Digital Technology for DP World, doing big things, moving mountains, making trade flow around the globe. Hans, great to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
We'll have you back soon. Jake Barr, a.k.a. the John Wayne Global Supply Chain. Always a pleasure, Jake. Safe travels to you.
Thank you.
And folks, thank you all out there across our global audience for being here. You're the reason why we do what we do. And I tell you, the last hour and some change, there's all kinds of actionable insights and perspective that you can put into practice, share with your teams, because as we've talked about a couple times today, it's not about that lip service. It's about deeds, not words. So with all of that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.